95% of Americans got completely wrong, like a shocking difference compared to my experience in America. I remember this was the first shocking thing that I noticed walking down the street in New York.
People here in the United States, the cultures that they're holding onto are almost, it sounds like a museum almost. It's like static, it's in time. Like even the dialect, the language, things have changed. They're not changing here because it ended with our grandparents or our great grandparents, and
That's
that's all
a
we have.
great point. Americans cannot call it the American Empire because it's like the mafia men calling the mafia mafia. But we know that the empire exists as we know that the mafia exists.
Hi, my name is Danielle Romero, and thank you so much for being with me here on my channel where we talk about American identity and family stories. And I'm really excited to have my friend on today again, Professor Luca. He is a professor in Rome, Italy, and he is one of those unique Italians who is really, really interested in the Italian American experience. And he's about to launch a channel. I am so excited for this channel, you guys. I cannot even tell you. I get such a kick out of seeing the difference between Italian and the American with Italian ancestry experiences, the differences. So I'm going to bring Luca on to talk about a video he's about to release. He sent me this video ahead of time. First of all, he's like brand new to YouTube, brand new to editing stuff. His stuff is already better than mine. Like straight up, it's better than mine.
Same building as my 92-year-old grandmother and my parents. And this is quite normal in Italy.
I will leave a link to that below. I'll pop it up on the screen. And if you'd like to support the work I'm doing, you can jump over to patreon.com/NYTN or grab some merch at nytonashville.com. Otherwise, let's go say hi to Luca.
Yeah, my name is Luca Coniglio and I'm an Italian professor of history. And I have always been particularly enthusiastic about Italian culture and its connection with other cultures, especially the American culture, because during my PhD, I studied in part in the US, and I've always been very interested in the American culture and its connection to Italy. So in my channel, which is called How to Italy, you can find a lot of, I hope, interesting stuff about Italian culture and identity in general, made by an Italian guy, because sometimes on YouTube, especially on YouTube in American English, I find a lot of stuff about Italy made by like Americans and Italian Americans, which is perfectly fine, and they should. But sometimes there are things that I think they need some, let's say, tweaks. And so I hope to provide some material, also shoot from Italy, because I like when I go across my country and my city to shoot some shooting and to show to people what Italy is really like, because I think sometimes people misunderstand our way of living and many other aspects of the Italian culture.
Yeah. And what I love about talking with you, Luca, is that you are, I don't want to stereotype, but I think sometimes Italian Americans or Americans with Italian ancestry aren't always super warmly received in the way they think they're going to be received by like actual Italians. And I think in part is because we think we know things that we don't like there's gaps there, not just as an American with Italian heritage. I think every American knows another Italian American. You will love this video. I couldn't stop watching it. And it was about the differences between Italians and Americans with Italian ancestry. Can you tell me just a tiny bit about like working on that video? And I want to jump in more to it, but I loved this video so much.
I mean, first, I am an historian of migrations in general, so the topic of migration has always been top of the list for me, and especially I've always been obsessed about Italian Americans, also because this was part of my studies and of my PhD thesis, and so I have always watched a lot of stuff made by Italian Americans. Not exclusively like serious movies and TV series that you all know, but also, for example, things that Italian Americans shoot, for example, on YouTube, where I see I like seeing the way they perceive themselves and the way they see Italy. And I thought there were many things to say that maybe also Italian Americans, they're not fully aware of their position in the world as Americans and as Italian Americans, because these are things that maybe are taken for granted, but maybe most of the American public and sometimes also Italian Americans don't know many things about the history. For example, one of the things that I focus the most on my video is the fact that Italian Americans are not just general Italian people, they're specifically Southern Italian, which is such an important thing to to understand in order to understand who Italian Americans are, their path in the American society. It's very, very important because in general, Americans tend to not distinguish between different parts of Italy, which when it comes to Italy, it's a very serious mistake because Italy is an insanely regionalized country. So I think they will find this video interesting, I hope.
Yeah, I think that was very shocking to me was that I think when I meet people just around if they have an Italian last name and we'll get talking and then I never really put the pieces together that the family was always from like Campania or Napoli or like it was like always the same regions. I was like, oh, my family too. How weird. I grew up in New York. So you have people from New Jersey and New York. I really have never come across someone that was really saw themselves as Northern Italian. There were so many things in the video though that I enjoyed. What was one of the contrasts that you did that was the most surprising to you?
Yeah, for example, the perception of food, which is a very popular topic because Italian American food, which I deeply respect, and that has also it has been recently analyzed a lot in a positive way by important Italian culinary critiques, etc., is still incredibly different from the Italian food that I grew up with, that I eat every day. And this is something that I think 95% of Americans got completely wrong. So associate the Italian American food with something, and when they arrive here in Italy for tourism or whatever, they expect to find the spaghetti with meatballs, ziti, and other things that, in the best case scenario, they're just specifically from a certain region of Italy in southern Italy. But most of the times, they absolutely do not exist in Italy. Most of the things that you eat and that I ate in Italian American restaurants in New York and New Jersey area when I was there,
Yeah.
they're not even a thing in Italy. There are two, like, as you said, the Italian identity that you perceive in America is the identity of our grandparents. And as I said, food is a perfect example. In fact, I said Italian American food, it is Italian, but it is Italian from the early 1900s, like pasta Alfredo that I touch in my video, which is a kind of sauce that in Italy has disappeared since the 1940s.
I can't believe
So
it's gone.
my grandmother was 93 in a month, born and raised in Rome. She have never heard of Alfredo sauce in its life, letting alone my parents who think that Alfredo is a guy on the street. Just because your Italian identity, that for in some ways is even more uh, uh, authentic, was the identity of your grandparents and great grandparents, which is perfectly fine. And as I say in the video, this does not mean that those Italian American things are not authentic of the Italian tradition, because on a certain way, they're more authentic than the Italian food that we eat here in Italy. But if you expect Italians if you expect to go to Italy and find the things that you are used to eat to Zio Franco restaurant in New Jersey, you'll be completely disappointed because it's such a completely different scenario what you will have in front of you on the table.
And I loved also the footage of you with your grandmother in the kitchen was amazing. Like that was the most amazing footage. I think it's going to resonate a lot with Italian Americans because we have this sense that we're close to our family, that we do things, but like we are not living with our grandparents for the most part. Like that is not a thing that happens here. And I think you said you guys were all on the same property.
Yes. We are in different floors, but on the same property. And as I said in the video, like this is quite common in Italy. It's not the rules. Not
Yeah.
all my friends are in this situation, but it's something, and in America it's unthinkable. In Italy, we still have these like close family relations throughout multiple generations, also because, and this is something I want to really focus on my channel in the future, we are a country of elderly, like our demographic pyramid is together with Japan, the worst in the world when it comes to the relationship between younger people and older people. So it is very common to have a family of four, even sometimes five generations. So my grandma, and this I think is a beautiful thing, she had the opportunity to see her great grand sons
Yeah.
and daughters, which I think that's beautiful, I think, and to see them nearly every day because she's downstairs in the in the floor next to me. So I think that's something that in Italy we still have a lot, depending on the region, depending on the situation, but it's still common, let's say, to be and even if you don't live together, as I do, in general, I like a shocking difference compared to my experience in America is that even if you don't live together, you see your parents, and if you have them, your grandparents, very, very often. Why American society is based on a completely different identity. Basically, as you know very well, once you go to college, you leave your household for good forever, and then you see your parents because you visit them. Of course, it depends on the family, but in general, you see them maybe one, twice, three times a year. In Italy, this is extremely rare. And also in Italy, you have the very, very close relationships with grandparents. I grew up with my grandparents, while my experience when I was in New York was that first, there were no elderly people at all in New York for two reasons. First, because in general, society in big American cities is much younger, demographically speaking, and also because in America you have the tradition, and when people retire, they go to Florida or New Mexico. So you don't see them in Los Angeles or in New York, where people make money in the most, let's say, dynamic cities of America. You don't see elderly. So I remember this was the first shocking thing that I noticed walking down the street in New York compared to Italy, because Italy is a country where you see only elderly. If you go down the street at the park, you see only people 70 plus,
Wow.
because together with Japan, and this is absolutely not a good thing, we are the oldest country in the world. I was in New York and it was the contrary. There were no people in no working age. You
Mm.
didn't find 80-year-old in New York.
Mm.
And then studying and being very interested about this topic, talking to Americans, I found out that they're just gone. They're in Florida and in other
Florida.
elderly care institutions. It's a completely different tradition compared to Italy.
Very different. One of the things that you brought up that I really want to get into and share the clip, the biggest thing that I had to learn when I was uncovering like my Italian heritage was that my great grandparents very likely did not see themselves as Italian. We would use the word Italian. That's not the language that they spoke. I've come to find out, and that they were both from like an area that was like so close to each other. They were like towns next to each other. And so, here in America, we have this idea of like out of many, one, we're 50 states, but we're one union, we're one, very patriotic for the most part. And you were saying that is just not the case in Italy. And I think sometimes Americans will, I'll use myself, is that we can prejudge things about why things are that way. They don't care as much about their country. They don't care. And as I'm learning and understanding why, I realize that's not the case at all. Can you
No.
explain a little bit about the differences in the patriotism and why it's so different?
Probably this is the topic that I am most interested in and that I covered in this video, but that I want to cover even more in the future. And also I got about a lot of inspiration. I got a lot of inspiration by your channel in general. So many great things that you brought to the public that really inspired me. And this is one of them. Um, let's say that people, like in general Americans, as maybe they can assume that Italians, when it comes to love, in general, love for the country, patriotism, and this kind of values, they might be similar to them, but they're absolutely not. The problem is that the reason why Americans think that Italians are particularly proud about their country, etc., it's not their fault. They were misled. For example, on YouTube, there are many channels that actually they make millions made by, for example, Italians, where you see, for example, Italians getting mad about, even if it's a joke, getting mad about, I don't know, Americans putting pineapple on pizza, and you see Italians that they get mad and they say, "Oh, you are destroying my country. You are, yeah, this is a shame. My grandmother would kill me," which is a part of the Italian national identity, but basically it's the only one. Um, Italian national identity is completely different from the American national identity. It's based on certain specific aspects of our culture, mostly food, music, some kind of music, and some sports, especially football that you call soccer. These are the very few things that let us feel proud of being Italian. But when it comes to the elements that most of the Americans feel as patriotism, so love for the country, being proud of being American, being not happy, but in general endorse everything that America in general that America does abroad, being very interested in the position of the United States compared to the other superpower in the world.
Right.
We're not like that.
No.
We absolutely don't care about these national aspects of our country. In general, this is something that Americans don't know. Italians have an extremely low reputation of themselves, and they have a lot of inferiority complex with many countries. The only things in which they feel superior, and that's true, it's food, where in general we feel, and very few other specific aspects, for example, the monuments, the beauty of our country, that yes, we feel proud. But when it comes to aspects that American take for granted, we're completely different. We have zero passion for again our position in the world, for example, our military. If you ask an Italian, what do you think about our military? I think we should dismantle our entire army, and the Americans will just save us in case of. So this is the perception of Italians. We feel we don't want to have anything to do with the serious geopolitical aspects of the world, which can be politics, economics, war. We just wanna be in our bubble made of food, tourism. This is the way we live. This is the way we are. And I think for Americans, it's particularly different because you guys in general, then there are many exceptions also in America, especially in this period, but most of the Americans are the complete opposite.
I'm thinking about this and I don't know if it's going to be so crazy that I'll have to cut it out, honestly, just like on the fly. I'm just thinking about the differences and thinking about how much old history influences like how we perceive the world today, even if we don't realize that it's affecting us. And just thinking about the way that what is now Italy came together, like that whole reorganization, that happened around the same time period of our Civil War, where our country was very fragmented.
Precisely.
But we saw ourselves as a union before, and the hope, where President Abraham Lincoln, the hope was to bring us back to that place of we used to see ourselves as one. We fought to become our own country. It wasn't imposed upon us, and we need to get back to that place. That was our origin story. We're banding together to tell King George to leave us alone. And Italy's story was very different. And I don't know a lot about that reorganizing. I've learned a lot from you, but it doesn't seem like it was as organic. It was much more imposed. And so I'm wondering, is that true, or what am I missing there as far as how Italy became Italy?
We're both historians. We have very similar visions on many things, and we both agree on the fact that the past shapes the present, and this is true both for this piece of American history that you just mentioned, and it's also particularly true for Italy. As you said, maybe most of the people in your public don't know, but Italy came together as a unified country extremely late in history. It was 1861. As you said, this is the same period as the war, the Civil War in America. Yes, as you said, our unification was a process that some people perceived as an imposition made by certain parts of the country in the north over the south. And in southern Italy, this perception that the unification was not made equal and shared among everyone, but was just imposed by the north, is still particularly strong. Yeah. And is one of the main fractures of our national identity. And this is something that is, you know what? It's incredible, but this arrived to Italian Americans. I remember many scenes of Sopranos. I remember other Italian American based movie and TV series in which, in the plot, there were the actors mentioning the fact that the northern Italians were different, and northern Italians destroyed southern Italy once they unified the country. So through the generation of their grandfathers and great-grandfathers, some pills of this story, which is still one of the most controversial points of today's Italy, arrived to Italian Americans. I am sure about this.
Okay, I almost got goosebumps hearing this, because I feel like, as different as the stories are for the two nations, we also have this north-south split. And if you are in the South, I'm in the South now. I've been here 15 years. I'm in Tennessee. But if you go even further south, there are a lot of people still who feel like what happened, they called it the war between the states. They talk about it very differently. And that the North imposed upon the South and forced them to comply with something they didn't feel like they needed to comply with, and broke the South. And I think it's only been, I remember growing up in New York, and there, I hate saying this, but truthfully, I remember learning history with a true sense of superiority over the South. There just was. It was like this idea of the South is backward. They lost the war. And I remember coming down here and thinking I didn't learn really any of this history. We learned our history because the North won, even though it wasn't supposed to be talked about that way. And so it's interesting to hear that there is this similarity there. There is that break there.
And you know what? What you just told me, I think is particularly important about the school programs, because the way people perceive their history is mostly by the things that you study in school. For example, as you said, you studied the Civil War as a triumphant victory of the superior North over over the South. And in general, this was my impression when I was in the US for numerous reasons. Now it is changing a lot because we have the woke movement and many other things happening. But in general, in America, school programs tend to be extremely patriotic in telling history. It's a fundamental part of the American. I am not American, so I'm not ashamed of call it like that, and I don't think it's a negative thing per se. It's a way the American empire fuel itself. Americans cannot call it the American empire because it's like the mafia men calling the mafia, but we know that the empire exists as we know that the mafia exists. Italy, the general idea of people who teach history that normally are people in the far left spectrum of the Italian political scenario, which is way more left than what you perceive as left in America. In their vision, Italian modern history is basically being guilty of ourselves, of our entire history. This is the way we teach. World War II was only the tragedy. World War I, we won, but we feel guilty that we won, except the unification was a tragedy. So everything is seen in an extremely negative way, which has consequences over our approach toward the rest of the world and ourselves, as I said before.
Sometimes when we're doing like the family stuff, I thought having the heritage, the ancestry was enough to bridge this gap and not realizing that things have moved on. Like we're saying, like countries have gone different ways. And I think it might have been you who said this. I'm not sure. People here in the United States, the cultures that they're holding onto are almost, it sounds like a museum almost. It's like static, it's in time. Like even the dialect, the language, things have changed. They're not changing here because it ended with our grandparents or our great grandparents, and that's all we have.
Great point. Such a great point.
Well, I think it might have been yours because I just had never thought about it. I thought I could take the words that I grew up hearing my grandpa say or this or that, and we'd be fine over there. And I've watched YouTube videos where people made that mistake, and it's like they're going to a totally different culture.
You're touching such an incredible point. There's so many things to say about this. Yes, you're absolutely right. Italian Americans, but also other, you talked about, as you said, American identity and family stories on your channel. So you touched even many other immigrant groups in America, not only Italians.
Yeah.
I can speak more about Italians because I know them well, but it was like that also because Italians, you said your family, they didn't want to speak Italian and things that we touched already. America, and I will say again the American Empire because I am also a passionate about geopolitics. The American Empire is a country of assimilation, not integration. When you become American, you have to become American for good and completely. This doesn't mean that America wants you to completely remove all your identity, but in general, America is a multi-ethnic country, but in my opinion, and in the opinion of scholars much more important than me, more of a monocultural country. So you have to totally, it's not Switzerland when people speak four languages and when other examples, you have to totally embrace the American identity because this is what empires do. They need people to be completely faithful to their new countries.
Yeah.
And so it is normal that your generation and your father's generation, despite maintaining some connections with the Italian culture and also loving it, they're completely Americans, as I touched they're completely American because this is the way America works. In Italy, we are not an empire. Now we are a country that, politically speaking, it's zero, is nothing. So we can integrate people. We have people who speak many different languages. I want to make a video about the #1 tennis player in the world that is playing the US Open final tomorrow, Yannick Sinner. Yes, he's Italian, meaning that he was born in Italy. He has Italian citizenship. In his region of Italy, they speak exclusively the German language. This would never be possible in America.
No, no.
Absolutely impossible. Because the American empire would be scared that Yannick Sinner could be more loyal to Austria, as these people are in
Right.
Italy, than America.
Knowing who we are helps us to just appreciate things so much more. I don't have to try to pretend like I know what's going on in Italy because my great grandparents live there, you know. But Americans have a lot
Such
of
a great
pressure
point.
to do that. I think we do. I think as people are doing family work, I've seen this myself, just this pressure of, oh, okay, like do I try to like fake it that I'm more connected to this than I am? And we realize like, you know, that's just part of the American thing. Like you were saying, that is being an American, you know.
Such a great point.
I don't know. I'm gonna come
Yeah.
no day. I'm like, I'm going to come, but I'm not going to come as an Italian American. I just want to come and just enjoy the food that is there.
I'm
For
so I'm so I'm really it would be amazing to meet in Italy.
yeah, I would
That would be
love
really
to.
really amazing. That
I
would
would love
be
to. I would love to figure out how to do it. My neighbors across the street are taking a cruise that's gonna bring them. They're gonna like go to I don't know. I guess they're gonna go to see Mount Vesuvius and stuff, and they're gonna do all that, and they're taking a boat, but I don't want to do it. A boat is like terrifying to me. I would much rather fly. So I don't know, but I would love to do it. But I'm really excited to bring this video. It was a really good video. Like you should be very proud of it. I'm
I will
excited.
see
I'm
what
really
happens.
excited for you. Thank you for letting me be a part. It's really cool.
No, thank you because really uh I think because I wanted to do this for so long. I've wanted to do this, but your journey was incredible because in 2 years with a channel that talks about things that are not popular. Like, you're not doing a channel about again Americans putting pineapple on pizza, which, as you see, it's extremely easy to
Yeah.
go viral. Your the path of your channel was incredible because getting 220 something thousand subscriber with these topics, it's really incredible.
Oh,
Like
I appreciate that.
if I had been able to do a tenth on what you did, like I would be. And so I have to say that your channel and doing these things with you was really the fuel that I needed in my engine to start.
I'm excited about your channel. I think you have
Oh, super.
amazing,
That's great.
like you're a great teacher and your English is incredible and you're so just knowledgeable about stuff. So, yeah, you definitely should
When
have
I do
done
the
some more.
captions, yeah, when I do the captions, because I have this strong Italian accent, I have to redo the entire captions because like 6 out of 10 words are completely wrong because I have this strong accent. So the editing program doesn't
Well, that happens
recognize
to
the
me.
word.
It happens to me too, unfortunately. I tried to enunciate better, but it's not how I talk. So I just like, well, I don't know. But it's kind of the appeal. I mean, it's just we don't want to hear a robot like we want to hear a person talking. And so I think that's great.